This month is Diastasis Recti Awareness Month, and because of that, Nicole and I have been doing a lot of research on the latest news on Diastasis Recti, writing some blogs, and I watched about 3 hours of YouTube videos, workouts, exercises, advice, just to see what people were saying these days and what was most popular. And something really surprised me. There are two really obvious things that people are leaving out when they're talking about diastasis, and they might not be obvious to you, but to me, they're pretty obvious, but I want them to be obvious for you too. I want you to be a smart consumer, to be able to understand exactly what you're seeing and be able to pick apart what information you should follow and what might not be so helpful. The first one is not incorporating a very key piece of the puzzle. So when I was watching these videos, what I heard a lot of, the phrases of pull your navel back to your spine, pull your abs in, suck your belly back, tilt your pelvis back, tighten and pull the belly button back, suck it in, suck it in, suck it in. I get what they're going for. They're trying to get you to strengthen those deep core and the transverse abdominals. However, they're leaving out the really key component that your core is actually made up of your diaphragm, your pelvic floor, and your deep core. Think about this. Your diaphragm, pelvic floor, and deep core create a canister, a pressurized system that is kind of like a cylinder. If you don't incorporate the top and the bottom, you're only working the middle of the canister. Think of a juice box. You squeeze the middle of a juice box, the juice has to go somewhere. It's either going to go up and out, or it's going to go down. When you're talking about diastasis, it's not just the belly that we need to think about. It is the rib engagement and the pelvic floor also. Essentially, the pelvic floor has got to be a part of any core work that you do, period. The pelvic floor has an intrinsic connection to your transverse abdominals. When you lift your pelvic floor, your deep core turns on. Without that pelvic floor lift, you're really not getting that deepest level of core engagement that you really need for true stabilization of your spine. Now when you watch videos about diastasis recti, I want you to look at what they're saying about the pelvic floor. And if they're not saying anything, that's okay. You can incorporate it for yourself, but you know that you're adding that missing piece. And then also look at what's happening in the ribs. Make sure that when you're doing core work, you're able to keep your ribs down. I'll show you what I mean. If you're starting to flare your ribs open and you're actually disconnecting from your deep core. So make sure you're engaging your ribs down, not over gripping, but just keeping the ribs down so you feel your upper abs actually working. They are the ones that will pull your ribs into place. The second thing I see people leaving out of diastasis recti awareness is not addressing the fluidity of the connective tissue of the core and explaining how things should feel. Because that connective tissue is so different for every single person based on your anatomy, based on the way you hold yourself, your connective tissue, your healing process, how much you have a diastasis. I hear these phrases said a lot. If it feels good, do what feels right for your body. Listen to your body. Only go at your own pace. But really, what does that mean? We need to break that down a little bit. How do you know what if it feels good really means? How do you know if you're using the right muscles? How do you know if you're using the wrong muscles? How do you know if you're making things worse? And most importantly, can you actually make progress following the blanket advice? One of the most important things you can do to be your own self-advocate is to feel your core. When you're doing core work, you should have your fingers on your core feeling what's happening as you're doing these different exercises. How does that connective tissue between your rectus abdominal muscles change when you do different positions? When you change your body position, when you change the intensity, when you change your breath. When you're doing these exercises, I want you to have one hand on your belly. You don't have to keep it there all the time, but check in periodically. If you're doing something a little more advanced than what you've done before, take a second to take your fingers and just feel what's going on in the connective tissue. That connective tissue I'm talking about, it's fascial tissue that connects the rectus abdominis muscles, the six-pack muscles, and the deep core transverse abdominal muscles. So that connective tissue lies from your sternum all the way down to your pubic bone, and it's right here in between where the rectus abdominis muscles lie. It runs from the bottom of the sternum all the way to the top of the pubic bone. So you want to feel what that connective tissue is doing through that whole length. What we're looking for is tension in the connective tissue through movement. We want it to feel like almost like trampoline material. Like if you pressed on your connective tissue when your abs are engaged, it should feel like there's a little bounce back. It shouldn't feel like your fingers can go all the way down and touch your spine. I know, gives you chills, right? You might feel that your connective tissue is starting to sink in a little bit. It's making like a divot. That means that the pressure is being sucked back in too much, right? Try lifting your pelvic floor, try dropping your ribs, try changing your breath and seeing if that connective tissue changes at all. You might feel your core and that connective tissue start to bulge. That also means that the pressure is changing and shifting in not such a great way. Can you play around with your rib position, your pelvic floor, your connection, maybe decrease the intensity a little bit and see if that changes how the connective tissue is reacting. And it also shouldn't feel like you have a dome or that you're poking everything out. I want you to become a detective for what's happening in your core. And if you're not sure what's happening, go slower. Slow it down. You should not feel core work in your butt. You should not feel it in your neck. You should not feel it in your shoulders. It should be in your core, in your pelvic floor, and probably a little bit around your ribs too. At a certain point, if you're not sure what you're feeling, or you're unsure of what you should be feeling, or if you're feeling things at all, find someone to work with. I'm actually doing private sessions via Zoom right now, so if you want me to help you, I'm here. I want you to be an advocate for your own body and for you to know exactly what's happening in your core so that when you go to watch these videos, you can say definitively, this is a good exercise for me. This is how I'm going to modify it to make it a good exercise for me. Thanks so much for watching. If you have other questions about diastasis or other topics you'd like for me to cover, comment in the box below and I will be sure to make more videos just like this one. Make sure you subscribe to my channel and hit the little bell button so you get notifications every time I post a new video. I'll see you guys soon.